The sound of laughter still echoes in my nightmares. Not the warm, joyful kind that brings people together, but the cruel, vicious laughter that tears your soul apart piece by piece. The kind that follows you into the darkest corners of your mind and whispers that you are worthless, that you deserve every terrible thing that has happened to you. But sometimes, if you are patient enough, if you are determined enough, that same laughter becomes the fuel that powers the most satisfying revenge imaginable. My name is Derek, and this is the story of how I went from sleeping in my car while my neighbors filmed me for their entertainment, to owning their house and watching them beg for mercy they never showed me. 3 years ago, I was living what I thought was the American dream. I had built a successful digital marketing agency from the ground up, working 18-hour days and sacrificing everything for the business I loved. My partner, Marcus, had been my best friend since college. We had started the company together in my garage, surviving on ramen noodles and pure ambition. For 5 years, we grew the business into something beautiful, a thriving agency with high-profile clients and a bright future ahead of us. I trusted Marcus completely. More than completely. I trusted him with my life, my future, my dreams. He was not just my business partner. He was the brother I never had, the person I would have trusted with my wife and children if I had them. We had signed partnership agreements that gave him equal access to our accounts, equal say in our decisions, equal ownership of everything we had built together. That trust destroyed me. The betrayal came without warning, like a lightning strike on a clear day. I woke up on a Tuesday morning in March, ready to tackle a big presentation for a potential client who could double our revenue. I checked our business account to transfer funds for some equipment we needed, and my blood turned to ice. The account was empty. Not low empty. $300,000 gone. I called Marcus immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed his number. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I drove to his apartment, but the landlord told me he had moved out over the weekend. No forwarding address. No explanation. Just gone, like he had never existed. It took me 3 days to piece together what had happened. Marcus had systematically drained our accounts over the course of 2 weeks, transferring money to offshore accounts I had never heard of. He had canceled our client contracts, telling them that I was having a mental breakdown and could no longer be trusted to deliver quality work. He had destroyed our reputation, stolen our money, and disappeared into thin air. The worst part was not the money, though losing everything I had worked for was devastating. The worst part was the realization that the person I had trusted most in the world had been planning to destroy me. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound could have. It made me question everything I thought I knew about human nature, about friendship, about trust. Within 2 months, I had lost everything. The business was gone, obviously, but the debts Marcus had incurred in the company's name were still my responsibility. The creditors came after me personally, seizing my assets, forcing me to sell my house, my car, everything I owned. I tried to fight it legally, but lawyers cost money I did not have, and Marcus had covered his tracks too well. By June, I was living in my car, a 15-year-old Honda Civic that barely ran and had no air conditioning. I parked it in different locations each night, trying to avoid the police and the security guards who would move me along if they caught me sleeping there. I showered at gym day passes when I could afford them, at truck stops when I could not. I ate whatever I could find on sale, often going days with nothing but peanut butter sandwiches and water. But the physical hardships were nothing compared to the social isolation. Friends disappeared when they learned about my situation. Family members, already distant, became completely unreachable. People I had helped, people I had been generous with when I had money, suddenly could not return my calls. The worst of all were my neighbors from my old neighborhood, the Kingsleys. When I had owned my house 3 blocks away from theirs, I had been the friendly neighbor who helped with yard work, who watched their kids when they went out of town, who lent them tools and never asked for them back. I had shoveled their driveway without being asked, had brought them casseroles when Mrs. Kingsley had surgery, had been genuinely kind to them for years. But the moment they saw me walking down their street in the same clothes I had worn for 3 days, carrying my possessions in a backpack, their attitude changed completely. Instead of offering help or even basic human compassion, they became my tormentors. It started with whispered comments as I walked past their house. "Look at him," Mrs. Kingsley would say to her husband, just loud enough for me to hear. I always knew there was something off about that one. Her husband, Robert, would laugh and nod, adding his own cruel observations about my appearance, my smell, my obvious desperation. But it escalated quickly. Their teenage son, Tyler, thought it was hilarious to throw garbage at me when I walked past their house. Fast food wrappers, empty soda cans, sometimes just handfuls of dirt or small rocks. He would laugh uproariously when he hit me, and his parents would watch from their porch with amused smiles, never once telling him to stop. "You smell like failure," Robert Kingsley said to me one afternoon when I was walking past their house. He was watering his perfect lawn, wearing expensive clothes, living in his beautiful house that I had once helped him repair. "Maybe if you tried harder, you would not be such a pathetic loser." The words hit me like physical blows. This was a man whose garbage disposal I had fixed for free. A man whose son I had tutored in math without charging anything. A man who had eaten dinner at my table and had called me friend. Now he was looking at me like I was something disgusting he had scraped off his shoe. But Mrs. Kingsley was even worse. Sarah Kingsley had always been judgmental, but her cruelty during my homelessness revealed a darkness in her that shocked me. She would film me with her phone when I walked past their house, sometimes following me for a block or two to get better footage of my shabby appearance and obvious distress. The worst incident happened on a particularly difficult day in August. I had been sleeping in my car in a parking lot behind a grocery store, and security had woken me up at 5 in the morning, threatening to have me arrested if they caught me there again. I was exhausted, hungry, and emotionally drained. I needed to walk to the library to use their internet connection to apply for jobs, and the route took me past the Kingsley house. Mrs. Kingsley was on her porch with her phone, clearly waiting for me. As I approached, she started filming, narrating my appearance like I was some kind of zoo animal. "Look at this," she said to the camera, making sure her voice was loud enough for me to hear every word. "Some people just refuse to take responsibility for their lives. This guy used to live in our neighborhood, and now look at him. Probably on drugs, probably mentally ill. Some people just do not try hard enough." She posted the video on social media that same day. I know because several people who had seen it told me about it later, some out of genuine concern, others out of cruel amusement. The video got hundreds of shares and comments, most of them mocking my appearance and agreeing with Mrs. Kingsley's assessment that I was lazy, worthless, and deserving of my situation. I wanted to die. Standing there on that sidewalk, being filmed like an animal in a zoo while this woman who had once accepted my help and kindness now humiliated me for the entertainment of strangers, I felt something break inside me. Not just my pride or my dignity, something deeper. My faith in humanity maybe. My belief that people were fundamentally good. But along with that brokenness came something else. Something cold and determined and patient. As I walked away from Mrs. Kingsley's cruel laughter, I made a promise to myself. Someday, somehow, I would make them all pay for this. I would rise from this hell they were helping to create. And when I did, I would remember every cruel word, every thrown piece of garbage, every moment of humiliation they had inflicted on me. That promise became my fuel. I found a job within a week, a part-time position doing data entry for a small company that paid barely above minimum wage. It was not much, but it was enough to keep me fed and to give me access to a computer and internet connection. I worked during the day and spent my evenings in the library, learning everything I could about digital marketing, online business, and investment strategies. I had always been good with technology and marketing. That was how I had built my original business. But now I was learning with a desperation and focus I had never had before. Every article I read, every video I watched, every course I took was motivated by the memory of laughter, the sting of humiliation, the burning desire for revenge. Within 3 months, I had saved enough money to start a small online consulting business. I offered digital marketing services to small businesses, working 18-hour days and charging rates that were probably too low. But I was not doing it for the money initially. I was doing it to build a portfolio, to establish credibility, to create the foundation for something bigger. The business grew slowly at first. I reinvested every penny I made, buying better equipment, paying for advertising, hiring subcontractors when I had more work than I could handle alone. I was still living in my car, still showering at truck stops, still eating peanut butter sandwiches for most meals. But now I had hope. Now I had a plan. By winter, I was making enough money to rent a small studio apartment. It was not much, 400 square feet in a rough neighborhood, but it had a roof, running water, and an internet connection. After 6 months of sleeping in my car, it felt like a palace. I kept working, kept learning, kept growing my business. I diversified into digital asset management, buying and selling websites, domain names, and online businesses. I had a natural talent for identifying undervalued digital properties and improving them quickly. What started as a survival strategy became a genuine expertise. The breakthrough came in my second year. I bought a failing e-commerce website for $8,000, redesigned it completely, and sold it 6 months later for $65,000. Suddenly, I had real capital to work with. I could take bigger risks, make larger investments, move faster. I repeated the process again and again, each time getting better at identifying opportunities and executing improvements. I bought websites, online services, digital marketing agencies, software companies. Some failed, but most succeeded beyond my wildest expectations. Within 18 months, I had turned that initial $8,000 investment into over $2 million in assets. But I kept my success secret. I still lived in the same small apartment, still drove the same beat-up Honda, still dressed modestly and avoided drawing attention to myself. I wanted to be invisible until I was ready to make my move. I wanted my enemies to have no idea what was coming. And I was watching the Kingsleys the entire time. I drove past their house regularly, noting the changes in their lifestyle, the signs of financial stress that became increasingly obvious as the months passed. Robert Kingsley had lost his job at the insurance company where he had worked for 15 years. Sarah Kingsley had started working at a retail store, something she had once said she would never do because it was beneath her. Their son Tyler had dropped out of the expensive private school they had been sending him to. The signs were all there for anyone who knew what to look for. The expensive cars were replaced with older, cheaper models. The landscaping service they had used for years stopped coming. The house itself started showing signs of neglect. Peeling paint, overgrown grass, small repairs that were not being made. I did not cause their financial problems. I was not responsible for Robert losing his job, or for the poor financial decisions they had clearly made over the years. But I watched their decline with the same cold satisfaction they had shown while watching mine. Then 2.5 years after I had started my comeback, I saw the notice posted on their front door. Foreclosure proceedings. The house was going to be auctioned to satisfy their debts. I had been waiting for this moment, though I had not dared to hope it would actually happen. I immediately called my real estate attorney and had her research the foreclosure case. The details were even better than I had hoped. The Kingsleys owed more than the house was worth, and there was very little interest from other potential buyers. The property was likely going to sell for much less than its market value. I had my attorney set up a shell company to make the purchase. I did not want the Kingsleys to know who was buying their house until I was ready to reveal myself. The auction was scheduled for a Thursday morning in November, and I was there with a cashier's check for the full amount I was willing to pay. There were only 3 other bidders at the auction, and none of them were serious investors. I won the bidding easily, purchasing the Kingsley house for $220,000. About $60,000 less than its actual market value. The irony was not lost on me that I was paying cash for the house of people who had mocked me for being homeless. The Kingsleys were not at the auction. They were probably at work, trying to earn enough money to survive, completely unaware that their former victim now owned their home. I let them stay for 3 months. This was not out of kindness, it was strategy. I wanted them to feel secure, to think they might have found a lenient landlord who would let them stay indefinitely at a reasonable rent. I wanted them to settle into a false sense of security before I pulled the rug out from under them. During those 3 months, I observed them carefully. They seemed to have learned nothing from their experience with financial hardship. Robert was still arrogant and dismissive of people he considered beneath him. Sarah was still judgmental and cruel in her treatment of others. Tyler had grown from a mean-spirited teenager into a mean-spirited young adult who treated service workers and anyone he perceived as lower class with obvious contempt. They had not become better people through adversity. They had just become poorer people with the same ugly hearts. The eviction notice was delivered by my attorney on a cold February morning. 30 days to vacate the premises. No exceptions, no negotiations, no extensions. The notice was professional and impersonal, giving no indication of who owned the property or why the eviction was being ordered. The reaction was immediate and predictable. Within hours, Sarah Kingsley was calling every real estate agent in town, trying to find out who had bought their house. She left dozens of voicemails for my attorney, alternating between pleading and demanding to know who their new landlord was and why they were being evicted. Robert showed up at my attorney's office twice, demanding answers and threatening legal action. He was told politely but firmly that the eviction was entirely legal and that the identity of the property owner was confidential, unless there were legal grounds to reveal it. For 2 weeks, they tried everything they could think of to avoid or delay the eviction. They claimed they had not received proper notice. They argued that the eviction was discriminatory. They begged for more time, promising to pay higher rent, offering to sign longer leases. But I had learned patience during my time on the streets. I had learned that revenge is best served not just cold, but at exactly the right temperature, at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right way. With 1 week left before they had to vacate, I agreed to meet with them in person. My attorney arranged the meeting for Saturday afternoon, at the house, my house, with the Kingsleys present to discuss their situation. I spent that morning getting ready with the care of a general preparing for battle. I wore my best suit, a custom-tailored charcoal gray that had cost more than Robert Kingsley made in a month. I wore my most expensive watch, my best shoes, my most confident smile. I wanted to look like success incarnate, like everything they had mocked me for not being. When I arrived at the house, they were waiting on the front porch. The same porch where Sarah had filmed me and mocked my appearance. The same porch where Robert had called me a pathetic loser. The same porch where Tyler had laughed while throwing garbage at me. I parked my new car, a sleek black BMW that I had bought specifically for this moment, in their driveway and took my time walking to the porch. I wanted them to see everything. The expensive car, the expensive clothes, the confident posture of a man who had not just survived but thrived. At first, they did not recognize me. I looked completely different than I had during my homeless period. Well-fed, well-dressed, clean-shaven, confident. Robert stepped forward with his hand extended, clearly expecting to meet some real estate investor or property management representative. "Thank you for meeting with us," he said. "We really appreciate the opportunity to discuss our situation. We are hoping we can work something out that benefits everyone." I looked at his extended hand for a long moment, then looked directly into his eyes. "Hello, Robert," I said quietly. "Do you remember me?" The recognition hit him like a physical blow. His face went white, his extended hand dropped to his side, and he actually took a step backward. Behind him, Sarah gasped audibly, and Tyler's mouth fell open in shock. "You," Robert whispered. "It cannot be you." "Oh, but it is," I replied, still smiling. "Derek Morrison, your former neighbor. The pathetic loser who smelled like failure. The man your wife filmed for her social media entertainment. The homeless piece of garbage your son threw trash at for sport." Sarah started crying immediately, not out of remorse but out of fear. She knew, they all knew, that this was not going to end well for them. "Oui," Robert stammered, trying to find words that might somehow undo years of cruelty. "We did not know. We did not realize." "Did not realize what?" I asked, my voice still calm and pleasant. "Did not realize I was human? Did not realize that filming someone at their lowest point and posting it online for laughs might be wrong? Did not realize that throwing garbage at a homeless person might be cruel?" Tyler, who had been silent until now, suddenly found his voice. "This is insane," he said. "You cannot evict us just because of some old grudge. This is illegal. We will sue you." I laughed then, genuinely amused by his continued arrogance. "Sue me with what money, Tyler? And on what grounds? I own this house. I bought it legally at a public auction. You have been given proper notice according to state law. There is nothing illegal about any of this. Please, Sarah said through her tears. We have children. We have nowhere to go. We just need a little more time. Did you give me compassion when I needed it? I asked her. Did you offer me help when I was sleeping in my car behind the grocery store? Did you show me mercy when you filmed me and posted it online for strangers to mock? She could not answer because we all knew what the answer was. I pulled out the eviction notice and held it up so they could all see it clearly. You have exactly 1 week to vacate this property, I said. Every piece of furniture, every personal belonging, every trace of your existence needs to be gone by next Saturday at noon. If you are not gone, the sheriff will remove you and anything you leave behind will be disposed of. Where are we supposed to go? Robert asked, his voice breaking. We do not have money for a deposit on another place. We do not have anywhere to go. I pretended to consider this seriously, as if their homelessness was a complex problem that required careful thought. You know, I said finally, I seem to remember someone once telling me that some people just do not try hard enough. Maybe you should try harder. Sarah's sobs became louder, and Robert's face flushed with anger and humiliation. But Tyler, true to form, was not done being awful. You are sick, he spat at me. You are a sick, twisted person. We were kids when that stuff happened. We did not know any better. I looked at him with genuine curiosity. You were 16, Tyler. Old enough to drive, old enough to work, old enough to know that throwing garbage at homeless people is wrong. And more importantly, you are 20 now. Have you ever once, in all these years, thought about apologizing for your behavior? Have you ever shown any remorse for how you treated someone who was suffering? He could not answer that either, because the answer was obviously no. Besides, I continued, this is not about revenge. This is about business. I bought this house as an investment, and I have plans for it that do not include tenants who cannot pay their rent on time. That was partially true. I did have plans for the house, though they were not what the Kingsleys might have expected. What kind of plans? Sarah asked desperately, as if knowing might somehow change their situation. I smiled then, the first genuine smile I had worn during the entire conversation. I am turning it into a transitional housing facility, I said. A place where homeless people can stay while they get back on their feet. A place where people who have lost everything can find some dignity and support while they rebuild their lives. The silence that followed was deafening. The irony was so perfect, so poetic, that even they could appreciate it. The house where they had lived while mocking homeless people was going to become a home for homeless people. The rooms where they had laughed at my suffering were going to shelter people who were experiencing their own suffering. Every room in this house, I continued, every space where you once sat and mocked me, will now provide comfort and hope to people who need it, people who deserve it, people who, unlike you, will be grateful for the help. Robert tried one last desperate gambit. We could work for you, he said. We could help run the facility, help with maintenance, anything you need. We have learned our lesson. We understand now what we did wrong. I almost felt sorry for him then. Almost. He was so desperate, so broken, so willing to humiliate himself to avoid homelessness. It was exactly how I had felt when I was begging for any kind of help, any kind of mercy, any kind of human compassion. But then I remembered Mrs. Kingsley filming me and posting it online. I remembered Tyler throwing garbage at me and laughing. I remembered Robert calling me a pathetic loser who smelled like failure. And any sympathy I might have felt evaporated immediately. No, I said simply. You had your chance to show compassion, to demonstrate basic human decency, to be the kind of people who deserve second chances. You chose cruelty instead. You chose mockery instead. You chose to kick someone when they were down instead of offering them a hand up. I turned to leave, then paused and looked back at them one more time. You know, I said, when I was homeless, sleeping in my car, being humiliated by you every single day, I used to wonder what kind of people could be so cruel to someone who was suffering. Now I know. You are the kind of people who end up losing their house to the homeless person they used to mock. I walked back to my BMW and drove away, leaving them standing on the porch of the house they were about to lose, crying and arguing and trying to figure out how their world had been turned upside down so completely. They moved out on schedule. I had half expected them to try to cause problems, to damage the property or refuse to leave, but they were apparently too broken and defeated to fight anymore. When I arrived the following Saturday to take possession of the property, they were gone. The house was empty, clean, and ready for its new purpose. Converting the house into a transitional housing facility took 3 months and cost more than I had paid for the property itself. But it was worth every penny. I hired contractors to divide the larger rooms into smaller but comfortable living spaces, each with its own bathroom and kitchenette. I furnished each unit with new furniture, linens, and basic appliances. I installed a common area with computers and internet access, a library, and a kitchen where residents could prepare meals together. Most importantly, I hired a full-time social worker to help residents navigate the complex process of getting back on their feet. Job placement assistance, mental health counseling, financial literacy education, help with applications for permanent housing. Everything I wished had been available to me when I was struggling. The facility opened 6 months after I evicted the Kingsleys, and it has been full ever since. We have helped more than 50 people transition from homelessness to stable housing and employment. Some of them stay for a few weeks, others for several months, but all of them leave with more hope and resources than they had when they arrived. I visit the facility regularly, not as the owner but as a volunteer. I help with job placement counseling, drawing on my experience as an entrepreneur to help residents develop business plans or prepare for interviews. Many of them do not know that I was once homeless myself, that I once slept in my car and was mocked by people who thought they were better than me. But some of them do know, and they find hope in my story. If I can go from sleeping in my car to owning multiple businesses and properties, then maybe they can find their way back to stability too. Maybe their current situation is not permanent. Maybe they deserve better than the cruelty and indifference the world has shown them. The Kingsleys, as far as I know, moved to a smaller apartment across town. Robert found work at a call center, Sarah continued working retail, and Tyler enrolled in community college. I hope they have learned something from their experience, but I honestly do not care whether they have or not. They are no longer my problem, no longer my concern. My revenge was complete the day they moved out of the house I bought specifically to evict them from. Everything since then has been about something more important than revenge. It has been about using my success to help people who deserve help, to show compassion to people who have been shown cruelty, to offer hope to people who have been abandoned by everyone else. The transitional housing facility is just one of several charitable projects I have funded since rebuilding my wealth. I have also established a fund to help small business owners who have been betrayed by partners, a scholarship program for homeless youth who want to attend college, and a legal aid clinic that helps people who cannot afford attorneys fight unfair evictions and other housing discrimination. I learned during my time on the streets that the world is full of people like the Kingsleys. People who will kick you when you are down, who will mock your suffering, who will treat you like you are less than human when you need help the most. But I also learned that there are people who will offer help without being asked, who will show kindness to strangers, who will treat everyone with dignity regardless of their circumstances. The difference between these two types of people is not wealth or education or social status. The difference is character. And character is revealed most clearly not when life is easy, but when life is hard. Not when we have everything we need, but when we have lost everything we thought we could not live without. The Kingsleys revealed their character when they chose to mock someone who was suffering instead of offering help. I revealed mine when I chose to turn their former home into a place of healing and hope instead of simply letting it sit empty as a monument to my revenge. That does not make me a saint. I am not pretending that my motives were pure, or that I did not enjoy watching them realize who their new landlord was. The look of horror on their faces when they recognized me was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. The knowledge that they were about to lose their home to someone they had treated like garbage was sweeter than any business success I had ever achieved. But revenge, even perfect revenge, is not enough to build a meaningful life on. It is not enough to heal the wounds that cruelty inflicts. It is not enough to create the kind of world where homelessness is met with compassion instead of mockery, where suffering is met with help instead of laughter. The real victory was not evicting the Kingsleys from their house. The real victory was turning that house into a place where people like me, people who have lost everything and been abandoned by everyone, can find the support they need to rebuild their lives. The real victory was proving that cruelty does not have to be met with more cruelty, that suffering can be transformed into compassion, that rock bottom can become the foundation for something beautiful. I started this story by saying that when you hit rock bottom, the world does not always offer a hand. Sometimes it just laughs. That is still true. There are still people like the Kingsleys in the world, people who will kick you when you are down and mock you when you are suffering. But there are also people who will offer that hand, who will show kindness to strangers, who will help others climb out of the darkness. And sometimes, if you are very lucky and very determined, you get the chance to become that hand for someone else. You get the chance to transform your pain into someone else's hope, your suffering into someone else's salvation. That is the real revenge against cruelty, not meeting it with more cruelty, but meeting it with such overwhelming kindness that it becomes irrelevant. Not destroying your enemies, but building something so beautiful and meaningful that their opinions no longer matter. The Kingsleys laughed when I was broken, but now their laughter has been transformed into the sound of children playing in the yard of a house that provides hope instead of harboring cruelty. Now their mockery has been transformed into the gratitude of people who have found shelter and support when they needed it most. They thought they were watching my failure. Instead, they were witnessing the beginning of my greatest success. And their former house, the place where they once felt superior to someone who was suffering, has become a testament to the truth that kindness is always stronger than cruelty, that hope is always more powerful than hatred, and that the best revenge against those who laugh at your pain is to transform that pain into someone else's healing. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories of triumph over adversity, revenge against cruelty, and the power of turning pain into purpose. Your support helps us share these inspiring tales and reminds everyone that no matter how far you fall, you can always rise again. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of survivors who refuse to let the laughter of others define their destiny.